What is up, guys? Stark here. I am back for another Fate video, and in today's video we are doing a new character spotlight for Tamamo Cat. So Tamamo Cat is, pretty sure she is an original character that came out when the game started, and she is a berserker character who has changed a lot since the debut of Fate Granddaughter. And much like in the previous video with Finn, we're going to go ahead and talk about her and see how much she's upgraded herself over the course of the years, and see if she's a viable servant or if she's still on the bottom tiers. So she is a berserker, and at level 80 she will have 11,458 HP and 9,026 attack. This will rank her 123rd overall in HP and 131st overall in attack. Her star absorption is 10, her star generation is 5%. This is nothing new for berserkers. They generally don't have really good crit abilities for base stats. Her noble Phantasm generation is going to be 0.71 on attack and 5% on defense. So pretty solid there for that. As a berserker, Tamamo is more offensive oriented than most other servants because of her berserker class. But she's not completely focused on offense as most berserkers are. She does have, a little bit of a supporting role with some of her skills, and she does have a little bit of defense as well, which is always really nice for berserkers to have. However, her first skill is completely centered around offense, and this will increase her own attack for 2 turns. So this is on a 5-turn charge time at maximum level, which is pretty nice. However, the fact that it only lasts for 2 turns is a little questionable. I do think this is down to the fact that she is an original character, and the game wasn't really developed too much at that point in time, and it has come a long way since. But most skills generally last either 1 turn or 3 turns now. Not many skills last for 2 turns. And I do think that in the future that she will get a buff to this skill that will kind of correct that. It'll probably bump it up to 3 turns. But a 30% increase to attack for 2 turns is still pretty solid, honestly. If you do use Tamamo at, I want to say optimal, let's just go with that, optimal usage, you only really need her for 2 turns anyway, so you do benefit from that. So it's really not that bad when you look at her usability, but it's just weird that it only lasts for 2 turns and there's no additional effects either. So, like I said, I think this skill will probably get buffed in the future, but really, for what it does, it's really not necessary to buff it, considering how Tamamo Cat is used in the game today. So her second skill starts with a little bit of questionable choices for Tamamo Cat in her skill set. But what her skill does here is going to have a chance to decrease a single enemy's noble Phantasm gauge by 1. So this will be on a 5-turn charge time as well at maximum level, which again is not that bad. However, it only has a 60% chance to work at max level, which is really, really questionable in my opinion. It doesn't even have a full chance to get rid of the charge. There's so many other skills in the game that have a full 100% chance to get that charge removed, and she has no other effects. So this is basically a coin toss to have it work or not, and if you fail, there's really nothing else for the skill that it has to offer. So yeah, honestly, the skill's, in my opinion, really bad. So they upgraded her second skill as well. They did give her that second effect that I was kind of hoping they would have, and it's going to apply invincible to herself 1 time over the course of 5 turns. But this isn't enough to salvage her second skill. Not only do they not bring up the charge decrease to 100%, if they would have done that, then at least the skill would have been solid. The percentages for the charge decrease don't change at all, and one attack over the course of 5 turns is really bad. As a berserker, she's going to take a lot of damage from those attacks that she does get hit with, and dodging one of them, it's not even for 1 turn. Invincibility for 1 turn, in my opinion, would have been a lot better than this. You could potentially still get hit with a Noble Phantasm even if you use this, because there could be a prior attack and then Noble Phantasm, boom, Tamamo's dead. Yeah, really questionable. I've seen where they do 3 times over the course of 5 turns. That would have been okay too. I don't understand the thought process behind this. As a buff, it really doesn't do much. It's nice, I guess she has a little bit of invincibility, but it's 1 attack over the course of 5 turns. Yeah, you can repeat it, but still, I don't like it. And then for her third skill is going to increase her own defense for 3 turns. So this is another skill that only has 1 effect, much like her first 2 skills at base. And the percentages for this are going to be pretty solid. You're going to get a 27% increase of defense on a 5-turn charge time. that's not bad at all. Really, it's a pretty solid skill. You know, you would always like to see it have more effects, of course, but overall a pretty solid skill for, at that point in the time there weren't that many characters, so you know, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now it's a pretty big deal to have a skill that only does one effect. Is kind of uncommon now, unless it's like a really good effect. But regardless, this skill does have an upgrade that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, or a few seconds rather, I guess. So, you know, at base it's an okay skill, but it does get much better with the upgrade to the skill. And speaking of the upgrade, her third skill does get upgraded, and in my opinion, this one's an actual upgrade, as opposed to her second skill, which really isn't much of an upgrade in my opinion. So this will get 2 additional effects. It'll increase her own maximum HP for 3 turns, and this can go up to 2000 HP at level 10, and this will also apply debuff immunity to herself for 1 turn. Now this is, in my opinion, this effect makes Tamamo usable, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we get to her noble Phantasm. So just keep in mind that her upgrade to her third skill is actually makes her usable, in my opinion. But yeah, I think this is a proper way to upgrade a skill as opposed to her second skill. I think that upgrade was not very good, but her third skill upgrade is fantastic, and it definitely fixes the character a little bit. And then she does have one passive, which is going to be the Madness Enhancement C, which will increase Buster Card effectiveness by 6%. So overall for her skills, I do think that she has a solid set of skills after her upgrade. I think her second skill is irrelevant and really not that good at all. But her first skill is pretty good, and her third skill is really good. So overall, I based it out to 4 stars for her skills. So taking a look at her command card deck and her noble Phantasm, for her command cards, she has 1 quick, 1 arts, 3 buster, and the hit counts are going to be 2 on the quick, 3 on the arts, 2 on the buster, and 3 on her extra attack. This is a pretty standard setup for Berserker Servants with the 3 buster card setup, which is nice because you could do that Buster Brave chain. So she's going to do a really good amount of damage because she is a Berserker, so she has that extra damage multiplier, and she has the Buster Brave chain for additional damage. And that's going to be really nice considering her Noble Phantasm is not a Buster Noble Phantasm. It's going to be a quick Noble Phantasm, so nice that she has the Buster set up there. For Noble Phantasm generation, she's going to struggle with this quite a bit, where you're going to bring in extra arts cards because she only has the 1. This will give you a 35% increase to Noble Phantasm gain. So more often than not, you are probably going to need to bring in some sort of additional help, as like servants coming in with their skills that can do Noble Phantasm generation. And then for crit stars, again, she's going to struggle with this really badly as she is a Berserker. She's not going to generate a lot of stars, so you're going to have to bring in a lot of help there for that. As I said, her Noble Phantasm is going to be a quick Noble Phantasm, and this will deal heavy damage to all enemies, and this will also inflict stun on herself for 2 turns. And then on the overcharge, this will recover her HP every turn for 3 turns, and this is going to be anywhere between 2,000 and 6,000 HP. So overall, she does a pretty good amount of damage, and her overcharge effect is really nice. Being able to get that heal is really big, and it can go up to a pretty high amount of HP healing. Obviously, the major flawback in what is that? The major flaw or drawback to this Noble Phantasm is the fact that she stuns herself for 2 turns. So yeah, after using your Noble Phantasm, she's going to be pretty useless. However, there is a workaround to this, and this is what I was talking about earlier with her third skill. If you use her Noble Phantasm in the same turn that you use her third skill, she's going to ignore that stun. So you're not going to get stunned for 2 turns, and you're going to be able to heal yourself for those 3 turns, assuming you're on the overcharge for it, and do a pretty good amount of damage, potentially wave clearing with her. So it becomes a good Noble Phantasm. Now, before we talk about it too much more, there is an upgrade to her Noble Phantasm, which upgrades the amount of damage she does overall, and it'll also upgrade the amount of HP that she heals. It would have been nice if it removed the stun, or at least reduced the stun down to 1 turn instead of 2, but regardless, her stun is kind of irrelevant if you use her properly. So let me explain. Basically, you can Scotty loop with Tamamo, however, you can only loop twice, and that's okay because you don't need her more than 2 turns. So effectively, you need to deal with the first wave on your own. Usually, I see a lot of people use Arash in that role, and that's a fantastic choice. use a Rash for wave 1, clear that out, bring in Tamamo. Then you can go ahead and use her second or her first skill, which gives you that 2-turn attack boost, which is what I was saying. You don't need her for 3 turns, so the 2 turns on the attack boost is more than enough. Go ahead and use her first skill and use her third skill, and then fire off her Noble Phantasm. So you'll ignore the stun, you'll more than likely clear the second wave, and then on the third turn, you can go ahead and fire her Noble Phantasm again, assuming you're using Scotty or a waiver or some other means of getting her Noble Phantasm generated. And then the fact that you stun yourself for 3 turns after that should be irrelevant because you're going to be winning the fight. I think I said 3 turns, I meant the 2 turns. But regardless, you're going to win the fight on the last wave there, assuming you're using it for like farming or something like that, which is what you should be using her for if you are using her. Then stunning yourself on that third wave is really not going to matter because you're going to win the fight. So you can make Tamamo Cat work as a Scotty servant, so maybe that is an option for someone who doesn't necessarily have some alternatives. Maybe you don't have Scotty and you have waiver instead and you need a Scotty. So you would need help there. You would need a super scope to do that, but there are workarounds to it and there are ways to make it work. So I think, obviously I wouldn't recommend using Tamamo Cat. There are better options, but you know, if you do have her, and maybe if you have her NP leveled up a little bit, it could be something that you look into using her for. And me personally, I'll probably go ahead and mess around with Tamamo Cat a little bit and see if I can use her optimally, because I do have her NP level 5, so I'm interested to see maybe if she does work a little bit better for me in some situations. Regardless though, just because of that, she is somewhat viable and somewhat usable, so you know, that's always pretty good. As far as damage goes, she is a berserker, so she's going to do naturally high damage. She does have her first skill to give her a good amount of damage boost, but outside of that, she doesn't offer too much as far as damage goes. So I am going to give her 4 stars in damage, which isn't really that bad overall. I do think she could do some pretty good numbers, but you're probably not going to bring her into like a challenge quest or anything on the norm. I guess there's some where you can probably try and bring her in with like quick boosters and stuff, but for the most part, you know, you're going to delegate her to farming and stuff. For her critical ability, I am going to give her 2 stars. She doesn't have any skills that impact crit at all, so she doesn't get any points there, and she's a berserker, so she has really, really low crit stats to begin with, so she actually loses half a point. 2.5 stars is always the average I go with, and you really need to have some sort of major flaw to your kit in order for me to drop it below 2.5 stars, but she has that, so really can't give her anything for crit ability at all. For her Noble Phantasm, I'm going to give her 3.5 stars. It's a pretty solid Noble Phantasm that is definitely useful in farming and wave clearing. It has a really good overcharge effect, but it has a really bad secondary effect. So the HP heal per turn is really nice. It's probably one of the better heals in the game, but the fact that you stun yourself for 2 turns is really bad. It basically handcuffs your third skill into being used hand-to-hand with your Noble Phantasm, and in my opinion, that's really a bad flaw for a Noble Phantasm to have. So it does lose some points there, but overall, you know, it's a pretty solid Noble Phantasm. Does good damage and all that stuff, so 3.5 stars for that. For her survivability, I'm going to be giving her 4 stars. The only reason why I'm not giving her 4.5 stars is because she's a berserker, so she's going to take more damage naturally. As I said before, the heal is really nice, and she does have her third skill for defense, which is going to be good, and increasing her own HP is also really nice. But her second skill doesn't really help for survivability. You get 1 attack in 5 turns, so that, I mean, it helps a little bit, but for the most part, it's really not going to be very helpful. And yeah, she's a berserker, so she's going to take a lot of extra damage. But overall, I do think she's a pretty tough servant to take out, and you know, especially for berserkers, she's going to be harder to kill as well. She does have lower HP stats because she's a 4-star, so it's not like she's going to be like a coup level of survivability, but she can hold her own, especially if you upgrade all of her skills. So it's going to be a fair challenge to get her killed. And then for her support, I'm going to give her 2.5 stars. She doesn't have any skills that support her team. None of the effects she have even target her allies. The only sort of support she may offer is going to be with her second skill if you get lucky enough to remove the charge off of the Noble Phantasm. But outside of that, she doesn't really have anything to help the team, and, you know, really her stunning herself for 2 turns even hurts herself and the team, because she's going to be pretty useless there, and it could potentially break your chains if you get a bad draw with cards. But, you know, you're probably not going to use your Noble Phantasm unless you have her 3rd skill active anyway, so that's really a minor point, but yeah, she's not really a support servant whatsoever. So yeah, overall that will give her overall ranking a 3.3 out of 5. Now this may seem a little low, but that's mainly due to the fact that she doesn't offer any sort of credibility or support, so that really drags down her overall ranking. But for what you're going to use her for, you don't need her for that. So, you know, she is usable in certain situations, but it's going to be specifically for those situations. So unless you're using her for like a Scotty looping, wave clearing farming team, you're probably not going to take Tamamo into the fight. So yeah, maybe she's a little bit better than her overall ranking suggests, but at the end of the day, you know, there's so many better Berserkers out there that you much rather take into the fight. So we're going to leave it there for that. And that is going to be it for this character spotlight. She is a unlimited servant or a non-limited servant, so you don't have to worry about pulling for her on specific banners. You will be able to get spooked by her at pretty much any point in time in the game when you're pulling, and she's a 4-star, so it should be even easier to pull for her. Although I guess sometimes that can be a little bit misleading. But regardless, she's not limited, so we don't have to cover her banners. But yeah, once again, that is going to be the end of this character spotlight, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I do have the links below to my Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and Discord. So feel free to check those out, and I'll see you guys next time.
というわけで南のシダは三々日光昼休み7時過ぎ。Good morning.